Chapter 5. Still Searching. At one point during my search for my mother, I wanted to try to find some of her biological family. Since my mother had been adopted and had her name, date of birth, and birthplace changed, I did not know any of her blood relatives. It was like my grandmother had erased any trace of my mother's whereabouts even before she ever left our family. So, not only was it difficult to find my mother, it also seemed impossible to locate members of her birth family. I searched old census records looking for Joe, my mother's great-uncle who raised her along with my grandmother. He was the only blood relative whose name I knew, so I thought I would find him, which would then lead me to other family members who were connected to him. However, due to Joe having such a common first and last name, there were tons of them listed in the census records. As a result, it was impossible to tell which one of them was the correct one. So, I gave up my attempt to locate my mother's blood relatives and placed focus back on actually finding her. I walked into a private investigator's office and asked if he could help find my mother. When he learned I had her Social Security number, he said he could definitely find her. However, I would have to pay the required fee in advance. I informed him that I had searched my mother's Social Security number a few times and had not been successful in finding her. So, I was reluctant to pay a fee to learn something that I already knew. Understanding my hesitation, the private investigator agreed to search first, and then if he found anything more than what I had already found, I would be required to pay for the additional information. He searched and, just as I suspected, he was only able to find the person named Kevin connected with my mother's Social Security number and nothing more. He was puzzled because he truly expected that he would be able to uncover more information with that number. Once again, a search was conducted that did not lead to finding my mother. I had a similar experience with a second investigator. A third investigator tried to locate my mother at no charge as a favor to a young woman who wanted to be a blessing to me. Sherry was hosting a woman's empowerment event and wanted to find my mother and reunite us during the affair. It was her belief that the attendees would feel uplifted by my story. She asked me to give her all the information I had of my mother. I cautioned her about the challenges I had experienced in my search, even though I had her Social Security number. She still seemed to have faith that her private investigator could find my mother, so I gave her the information and hoped for the best. Leading up to the event, I felt like even if they did find my mother, I could not imagine her agreeing to a reunion in front of strangers. I doubted the investigator's ability to pull off the reunion. Nevertheless, I felt grateful for Sherry having the heart to want to try it. Days before the event, she gave me the news that her investigators had been unable to find my mother. Since I had not really allowed my hopes to rise up, I did not feel let down. I still attended the event and had a lot of fun. After the event, I gave searching a rest for a while. March 24th, 2009. I had just finished writing a new book and was preparing a national press release to promote the paperback. It occurred to me to use that same announcement as an opportunity to try to locate Mom. So I coupled information about the book and my missing mother in one write-up. Geneva had been gone for 40 years when I publicized that press release. She would have been around 70 years old, so I still had some hope of possibly finding her alive. After the press release was made public, I met a very helpful woman who had access to non-public resources that could help locate my mother. She offered to help, asked me for all the information I had, and conducted a very thorough search for my mother. She found an address that she believed was my mother's. I used an online map to locate the address. I also searched online for the property report and found a possible owner for the property. It was interesting to find a potential landlord, but it was not helpful to my search. I was not convinced my mother lived at this address, but I sent a letter to her there just in case. I wrote, "My name is Grace. I am the youngest of the 6 children you gave birth to before you left Kansas City, Missouri in 1969. You were married to my father, Jerome, who is no longer alive." I continued, "Your other children and I are all doing very well, and we have longed to see you again. I have searched for you for many years, but have not been successful in finding you." I included my phone number and address and asked her to contact me. I even included a self-addressed stamped envelope so she would not have to pay for postage if she chose to write me back. I concluded, "There is a lot more I wanted to say, but I want to give you the opportunity to respond to my letter." I never received a response, and this fueled my doubt about that being her address. April 2nd, 2009. The Helpful Woman's search revealed the same Kevin who I had located during an online search 9 years ago. But there was something special about the record she found. It listed a different middle initial, last name, and date of birth for Kevin. The record date was January 1997. I presumed this was the same record that I found for him back in January of 1998, but with a corrected name and date of birth. I was thinking that Kevin could possibly be one of the children my mother had after leaving us, thus my half-brother. I did additional research on the corrected name and found several family members for him. None of the phone calls led to any new information, so I eventually gave up on that lead. However, I never stopped wondering why my mother's Social Security number was connected with Kevin. The next day, I sent a note with pictures to my mother through the Social Security Administration's letter forwarding program. Since so many years had gone by, I thought I would try again. The rules were still the same. They would notify me if they did not find a Social Security number for her. However, they would not be allowed to notify me if they found an address or were able to forward my inquiry. 1 month after I left the letter, I received correspondence from the Social Security Administration office, which included the pictures I had enclosed. They were not allowed to send pictures, but they did not return my note. This led me to believe that it had been sent. I never received a response, so I was not sure if my mother just never received it or if she received it and chose not to respond. The latter was hard for me to accept, so I just told myself she never received it because that was easier for me to comprehend. September 30th, 2009. I published my foster care story and purposely included real names for my siblings and mother with hopes someone would recognize the names and provide information that would lead to finding Geneva. It had been 41 years since she had left. December 16, 2009. A television show producer learned about my foster care story through an online search and offered to assist me in finding my mother in turn for me coming on the show for the reunion if her search was successful. When the producer learned I had my mother's Social Security number, she said she felt very confident that their investigators would be able to find her. I told her of the past challenges I had with searching her Social Security number, but she was hopeful that their show detectives would have more success. The thought of the show finding my mother and me being able to give my siblings the good news caused me to become excited and accept her offer. She provided me with a 12-page application to fill out and return, requesting my name, children's names, occupation, and information about the person I was seeking. That long list of questions included, "How will finding your relative change your life?" I answered, "It would satisfy my longing to see her, meet her, and to know how she is doing." And if you saw her again, what is it you would like to say? My response was, "I love her. I have missed her. I do not blame her for leaving." It inquired about my entertainment experience and medical history. I felt puzzled about why they wanted to know all of that. Nevertheless, I answered all of the questions. The last request was for me to nominate someone else to be on the show. I responded, It would be great if you could find my 3 half-siblings whom my mother gave birth to after she left. Also, my 5 siblings who my mother left would possibly want to come on the show if our mother is found. Finally, the entire application was complete and submitted. Hopeful emotions ensued as I waited for a response. A few weeks later, the producer called, apologizing that the show was unable to locate my mother. In my heart, that outcome was somewhat expected based on my prior search experiences. Still, feelings of disappointment arose because I had been hoping that maybe this would be the moment that I would finally be able to reunite with my mother, but it was not. By now, I had sent numerous inquiry letters, hired investigators, examined public records, and conducted online people searches. Victory was out of sight and hope was dim.
If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel.